It is the Anfield Wrap. It's Neil Atkinson, and I am joined by Phil Blundell, by Stu Wright, and by Mark Jones. It's a show in 3 parts. Actually, you've got a part 4. Lucky you. Part 4 comes from Hong Kong, Japan. It comes from John Gibbons, who's out there with Craig Hannan, where they've had a chat about the tour so far, and you should have been seeing all of that stuff both on the Anfield Wrap's channels and also everything that gets released through the app. So check that out and download the Anfield Wrap app if you have not already. So the 3 parts are the business, the game, and then the Diaz. I want to talk about the Diaz as a footballer. Give it as much as we can in terms of everything that he brought to Liverpool. We'll end with that, and there's some of that as well coming from John and his crew coming up as well. But before then, I want to talk about the business. At the time of recording, Phil, there's noises that Sesko may well is being wooed, if one could be wooed, by the Red Devils, by Manchester United. Liverpool could do with Newcastle getting their house in order to be able to get what they want, which is Isak, if Newcastle will bend that way. But I think the thing that helps Newcastle bend that way is if they feel as though the deal is worth it for them, that they can replace the player and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately what Liverpool have to do is give them money to buy a centre-forward, maybe 2 centre-forwards, maybe 3 centre-forwards. I don't care. Just keep going until you get as many centre-forwards as you're happy with, and you can get this deal done. So someone turning up slightly out of the blue, not 100% out of the blue, but it wasn't talked about the last couple of days, was it? Sesko and Manchester United being a thing? I don't think. It's a little bit of a problem because, as you say, you need Newcastle to do something and make it think that there is a world where selling Alexander Isak makes sense. Might not necessarily be the best possible outcome, because I think he's of a certain level that's broadly speaking impossible for them. But they've got to look at the situation and go, okay, we can sort of take this money, we can spin it into that, we can spin it into that, we can spin it into that and that, and we're in a better position. Like I think the defence probably needs little bit more depth. I think they need more options in midfield. Whilst they've got a very strong midfield, they probably to get back into the top 4 and compete in the Champions League, they will need a lot more depth, I think, this season, and selling Isak enables them to do that. But they have to actually be able to look at the situation and go, here's how we get the depth. And Benjamin Sesko going to Manchester United and being taken out the clutches of Newcastle would be a bit of a problem for that, and it would be something that we could probably do without, I would suggest. It's so much of this, Mark, is going to come down to, I think, the attitude of the Newcastle ownership, and I think that is the defining factor now. In that from all the noises, I very much don't think the Newcastle manager is going to be a blocker. I think there's things he would like. He would like the world to be a little bit different, perhaps, but I don't think he's going to be a blocker. I think that the key part on this is whether or not Newcastle feel as though literally the money, because I don't think there's much chat about the money. I think we know Liverpool are prepared to break a British transfer record. Liverpool are prepared to pay big wedge. They're not trying to get him out on a cheap little deal. Liverpool are prepared to go all in, it looks like, and make sure they get the player. So the question becomes whether how Newcastle's ownership feels about the money.
Yeah, and how they look in the whole scenario, how they come out of it, or how they get the message out to the fans, how they can almost probably pin it on Isak in terms of wanting to go. They want to come out of this. I mean, the fans are already unhappy. They've been linked with 5, 6, 7 players this summer and it hasn't gone through. You look at, I mean, the scenario around the James Trafford move and things like that, just things that don't make sense at that club.
And
Buemo, yeah, and there's a few more. Obviously, they were linked with Ekitike a little bit as well.
Delap as well.
Delap was there. There's
Pedro. They played him for Pedro.
Yeah, and it's not a good look when you've got Champions League. You've they won the first trophy in however many years it was. You've sent this message out, right? We're here now, and then this is unfolding, and they're not coming out of it well. So I think we're entering the stage of it now where they need to do something to just get everyone back on the same page again. There's a lack of leadership there, I think, and it's how he's almost filling that void. But as you said, how probably just wants it done and dusted, and he wants to look at his squad and go, I mean, Isak's not training, is he? He's not with them on the tour, so he wants to get things moving for the start of the season.
I can't stick with you on it, Mark, because I think it is a reminder that football clubs are hard things to run these days. There's so many moving parts to all of this, and one of the issues, I think, whilst it's quick, Sesko, Manchester United, it appears to have sort of moved quite quickly. It's also moved quite quickly for Newcastle. You get that impression as well. I'm sure that there is forms of contact all the way through, but it doesn't feel, Newcastle, to me, from the outside looking in, there was a huge sense of togetherness come the end of the season. There was winning that first trophy, getting the Champions League place back, and all of that was really, really good momentum, but that stuff can dissipate. And it just sort of feels to me as though they haven't had someone there, because the manager's doing his job up until May the whatever. Even if you want to say, he's doing more stuff now, the manager's doing his job, and I just think there's become a little bit of a thing where the yards that we hear that Liverpool do on players, we've been talking to Ekatike since January, it doesn't look like there's anyone doing that stuff for Newcastle.
No, and I don't know whether they thought it would just magically happen with the money, with the trophy, with the Champions League qualification. I don't know if they just thought, well, we're here now, and this is let's play with the big boys. Yeah, I mean, every time Liverpool sign a player, you're told they've been tracking him for years, in some cases, going right back. So, this work has to be done now. And you can say, it's still relatively new in their ownership, so maybe all these things will get in place, but it doesn't fill you with confidence in terms of what they're doing, and they seem to be just behind the curve on everything, and this, like Sesko is the latest one. You look at, Sesko started the summer. I remember last summer, stuff from work last summer. I know he was Arsenal's sort of first choice last summer, but then obviously Gyökeres sort of came to the fore and almost surpassed him. And Sesko's become this name that's on everyone's list. He'll be on Liverpool's list. He'll be on everyone's, and it's kind of now perhaps reaching a point where him and Man United are looking at each other and going, yeah, okay. And for Man United to be in that position, for everything that's wrong with them, they're still Man United. They've still got this draw for players. So Newcastle are kind of behind that as well. It's a long way back for them now. Does the sale of Isak help? I personally think it would. I think it will. It'll allow them to reset and have the money to be able to sort of go again. So I think it's entering this stage now where they're gonna have to make a decision one way or the other. I think
for me, what would worry me is I don't feel as though they don't appear to have the sort of flexible infrastructure to say, well, if that can't happen, we've got to go on to this. Stu, I think Liverpool could really do with Manchester United going away here, because I think it just offers, therefore, clarity. Also, just to get it done quite quickly as well. We keep talking about how long is this going to take. I think Liverpool would be prepared to wait until August the 31st. But the flip side of that is, then if it doesn't happen, Liverpool, will not want to be left short. And also, there's just other moving parts in terms of Liverpool's other recruitment if they can't get Isak. And I think if Liverpool have to wait for Newcastle to flail around a little bit, it will become frustrating.
Yeah, flail, I think, is the right word. You're absolutely right about they'll have infrastructure at Newcastle, and it's clear because of that they've got no coherent plan A, B and C to move on to. It hasn't taken very much to derail the whole thing. And what else is really clear, to be honest? It seems like Liverpool are the only club in town who are willing to do any kind of business with Newcastle. So for whatever reason, they're just not able to get things over the line. So, stranger things have happened than Darwin Núñez and Harvey Elliott turning up at Newcastle as part of a deal here, because Newcastle need players. Newcastle need to shift the narrative. They need to be able to, if they are going to lose Isak, they need to be able to simultaneously be able to give their fans some hope and some optimism going forward, something shiny and new. And what better than a centre forward who scored two absolutely tremendous goals right in front of them, not so long ago. And also one of the players of the tournament at the under-21s in Harvey Elliott. He's much sought after. I think he'd bring a little bit of magic to their team. So listen, it's very speculative that, I've just plucked that out of nowhere, but it does seem to me that Newcastle need players. They can't get any business done. Liverpool are willing to do business with them. Liverpool are also looking to get rid of some very good players. Stranger things have happened.
Stranger things have happened, but it seems as though for Newcastle, I think with that, Stu, I think that Liverpool may well try to explore that. They'll say, this is a direction of travel. I'm absolutely certain the Leverkusen Quanta thing, swap deals aren't a thing anymore. People don't do them massively for accountancy reasons, but I suspect Leverkusen got a sort of deal on Quanta that maybe another club would not have got. And I think that Liverpool can offer that. I just worry or wonder about, again, it's back to sort of wider perception. Newcastle want to feel the big boys points. They want to feel as though they're back with the big boys. And I think in loads of ways they are and they can be, but they've got to be smarter. And this is back to them just seeming like they're just behind every single curve that's going at the moment. And that there's a universe where if Newcastle were ahead of the curve, quite possibly now they'd have Hugo Ekitike. Isak could be playing for Liverpool. They'd have a big pile of cash and PSR wiggle room, but they weren't prepared to go down that route. I could be completely wrong about that. I hasten to add, we don't know. But that outcome was a possibility for them. And yet instead, they've ended up here now. And as I say, if Sesko doesn't go there, I don't know quite what their next move is, not least because I think every other club, especially in the Premier League, will go, well, if you're Mateta, we don't need to sell you, Mateta. If you're Crystal Palace, we've got all the Premier League money, we don't need to sell you, Mateta. You're going to have to pay and pay and pay.
Yeah, and the idea of them wanting to be seen as one of the big boys, I think if their long-term planning comes off, there's almost a sense of inevitability about that. But that doesn't have to be now, and quite clearly, it's not right now. How they see themselves should not be defined by this transfer window. The transfer window, there's always one after the other. There's always another one, and this just isn't their moment. That's been clear so far in this transfer window. They've not been able to get the business they want done. They've got their star player wanting out. They might need to bite the bullet. I think they will need to bite the bullet on that. And then let smarter minds come in and, gather the thoughts and put a plan, for the future going forward. I think now is the time for Newcastle to take the money and just take a breath instead of, as you said before, flailing around, because at this point it looks a little bit embarrassing.
Did you read Rory's piece in The Observer?
No.
Where he sort of compared them to Atalanta and how Atalanta will sort of move players in and they'll have a churn of people and be happy to sell someone because they know they can get someone else in and they can get a lot of money in, and it felt like that's sort of a plan that they need to have that they kind of didn't have. I mean, I do wonder if we might end up with something a little bit strange in that Nunes goes there to Saudi Arabia for an inflated fee, and that then enables us to pay an inflated fee for Isak, and they can sort of do a slight diddle that they couldn't.
But they still have to get the footballers in.
They still have to get the footballers in, absolutely. But it would, and just sort of, but you do wonder sort of how many moving parts there are in this whole thing, because it does feel like it almost feels like trying to complete a chain on a house move, like with a ridiculous number of moving parts. But Newcastle are sort of in the middle, bumbling about with sort of, well, I've got this amount of money and I want that house, but I can't quite get that house sorted, and it sort of feels a bit strange, and it feels like I think it could drag on quite a while.
Why I'm worried in general is I think they did the wrong thing last summer. I think it's hard to say that because they win a trophy and so I've got to go on my own maximum. If you do a transfer window, you do a season, and if you're happy with the season, you can't moan too much about the transfer window. But in terms of what happens last season, I wonder if they'd have been better off letting Gordon go and keeping and Elliot Anderson and Yakuba Minter, both of whom look like really, really good players, and they go down the path that they go down last season. But Gordon is seen to be the bigger jewel at that moment in time. He feels less jewelly now for them, but he was the bigger jewel at that moment in time, Stu. And obviously they went that direction. And a really good comparison on this is Liverpool. I don't think Liverpool were desperate to sell Diaz. I think Liverpool had their price that they were willing to accept for Diaz, and have got that price, £65 million plus the add-ons. This is a player Liverpool paid around 40 million for 4 seasons ago. They've got themselves this player. They've had him all the way through. They've now chosen this moment to move him on because Liverpool feel as though they've got a confidence in what happens next. And I think that this is the strategizing of all of this is the bit that worries me, because if you don't, to your point of take a breath, there's someone who runs Newcastle who might say, well, we will take a breath. What we'll do is we'll hang on now till January. And we don't do that even because we need that player to play for us through, and he might not be happy, but he's going to play for us, and then we'll do it in January because we need 3 or 4 months to get ourselves straight. And again, this is one of the things that I just sort of come back to, is if they can't replace him, there's every chance they just go, right, we need 4 months to get our shit together because our shit isn't right.
Yeah, and I know that's always been your fear, and the reason I said that about taking a breath is there was probably about, going into this transfer window, there was probably considered in Europe about 4 or 5 premium centre forwards that were potentially on the market, and if Sesko goes to Man United, then I think that's all of them. I don't think so, because there was Gyökeres, there was Sesko, there was Ekitike. Jonathan David was obviously available on a free as well, but there were about 4 or 5 names rattling around.
And Isak.
And they've got Isak. So I think, the next cab off the line is your Mateta,
Moise Keane.
Absolutely, Solanke. These players are the next ones potentially in line here, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's going to pacify the Newcastle faithful. To be honest, I think the fan base were they're starting to become resigned about Isak, but they were also thinking that the Sesko was that move would potentially fit their model, young exciting talent that they can mould and turn into something really exciting going forward. I'm not sure they'll feel the same about the 29-year-old Wissa. I'm not sure they'll feel the same around Mateta, the age he's at. I'm definitely not sure they'll think the same about someone like Solanke, and I've not seen any mention of that, but I'm making that link, that next tier, I suppose, of strikers. So that's why I say take a breath. They will need to sign someone, well, whether it's a Mateta, whether it's a Wissa. If they lose Isak, they have to sign a centre forward. But in terms of how they see themselves and how they define themselves, their project going forward, and I think this is something that the Newcastle fans will probably have to get their head around, is now isn't everything. Now is the time for calm heads. Get a little bit of smart business done. Don't be thinking that you've got to get your flagship player now.
I want to talk about Diaz. I'll talk about Diaz as the player later on, Mark. I want to talk about Diaz as the business proposition. It ends up being, I think, Liverpool are pretty close to the price that they wanted all the way through. They'll feel as though that move can fund another player, whether it is Isak or go from there. I am going to continually be of the view, if it's Diaz and Nunez out, it needs to be 2 in. It's noticeable Chiesa isn't on the trip. I think with Diaz, it does feel like one of those which is a good deal for all parties. Where it's ended up, that player gets the move that he's been looking for. Liverpool get the money, and Bayern Munich needed, I think, at least a bit of a sense of a breath of fresh air, and Diaz will definitely be that for them. Yeah,
we were just saying with Phil, I think it's almost the kind of nicest transfer you've seen in a while. Everyone seems to be on the same page with it. It's a good price. I was here last week and we were talking about it, and I was saying the only way I could have seen things becoming a little bit kind of fraught is if the player started agitating more and more for the move, because you wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want it to end that way for him, because he's been a good servant. He's been a very good player in the season just gone, a very important player in winning the league and in other trophies as well. So the business side of it, I think, to me, it just really emphasises, going back on what we're talking about Newcastle, it really emphasises how well things are run behind the scenes, because again, I mentioned this last week, but you never wanted a situation where you've just had at Man United where 5 players are turning up after everyone else has gone home because they don't want them around the place, or a situation like you've got at Chelsea where there's an enormous squad of players who aren't even part of the first team picture. So you never wanted that for Diaz, and he seems to have been, like I say, pretty amicable with the whole thing. He's gone to Japan with them. He's clocked up the air miles. He's flying around. I'm sure he'll be off to Germany, if not today, maybe tomorrow. But it just seems to be smoothly done, and Liverpool got the price they were after. And I think the player goes with everyone's good wishes, and it's just the contract situation, I think, is, again, I think we're all adult enough to understand these things now. We understand how it all works. We understand that a 28-year-old is not going to get the deal that perhaps he wants for he would like for his career, because they've given the money to Salah, given it to Van Dijk, and they're quite special circumstances. It's not like Liverpool to give these deals out to everyone. So no, I think all power to him, and I think it's one that everyone can genuinely sort of shake hands on.
It's one where, from Liverpool's point of view, it's £65 million. There may be add-ons. I suspect there won't be that many at that price for a player of that age, or if they are, they might be quite difficult to achieve, because I think if you negotiate with Bayern Munich are able to say, yeah, we probably just win the Bundesliga. Yeah. So what are we all doing here? Yeah. So it's worth...
Ironically, I'd feel like you've been kicked in the teeth if they didn't win the Bundesliga.
Like. So you end up in this sort of situation. But what I want to say is £65 million pounds. Ekitike was much reported. It might not be 100% correct, but it's £69 million pounds plus the add-ons. Which I think are likelier to be actual add-ons that have to get paid, sort of 10 million-ish in them. But the point is served, Phil, that Liverpool have effectively managed, let's just call it 15 million maybe, to have done. Diaz out at a much younger Ekitike in. Diaz turns 29. Again, from a business point of view, Liverpool will be pleased with that at this moment.
Yeah, the whole transfer just makes so much sense for everyone, bar possibly the buying club. Like, I'm not 100% sure it makes a great deal of sense to Bayern Munich as it does to Liverpool and to Diaz. I think you looked at it from Liverpool's point of view, you could see why they wouldn't think a new contract would be a good idea. You can see why Diaz would think a new contract would be a good idea, and he's now managed to find someone who is willing to give that to him, and it sort of feels like it just makes so much sense for everyone. Like, I really like Diaz as a player. I would still think he's in Liverpool's strongest 11 as we sit here in the here and now. But at the same time, I don't think Liverpool should be committing big money to someone who will be, give him a 4-year contract and you've got a 32-year-old winger on big money. I just don't think that's a particularly solid idea, given that we've got a 32-year-old winger on big money and we've seen how difficult the sort of managing the concept of the contract is. So getting involved with somebody else who is nowhere near the level of that other individual and going, yeah, you can have this and we'll see where we are in 4 years' time when you're 32 going on 33. It just doesn't make a great deal of sense when there are always more footballers out there, and we've managed to take the money, add a little bit onto it, get someone who is 7 years younger, 6-7 years younger, something like that, has a lot of potential, is performing at a really good level, and is able to come in and offer Liverpool something that they really need or want. And we obviously don't quite know exactly what they want, but I'm also starting to think that what they want on the left side is possibly not what Luis Diaz's game is. It sort of looks a bit like they want more of an inside forward than a winger, and that's what Ekitike is. It's probably more what Gakpo is. It enabled the left back to provide the width, and you go from there. This is a complete guess on my part, but it just sort of feels like that's what's kind of falling into place in that position. So when you're offered this level of money for someone, you can sort of go, thank you very much. And if they'd have kept him, I think they'd have been all right with it. And I genuinely do think they were all right with him leaving on a free in 2 years' time. I don't think that is something that is a myth or is...
No. And they're also Liverpool. Yeah. We know the work.
Exactly. So it just feels like it's everybody has come out of this happy.
Last little bit on it is no Nunez, no Chiesa on the trip, Stu. Nunez, doesn't play the other day. No Chiesa on the trip. It does feel as though it will be a very, very different attack next season. From Liverpool's point of view, Malik Fofana there's been some noises around him moving from Lyon. Supposedly he's waiting for the Champions League club one way or the other, linked to Bayern Munich as well. He's also under 21. It's worth pointing out he's 20 years old. So if there is any issues around sort of registering, at least domestically, he can bypass them for 12 months. From Liverpool's point of view, I think he looks frisky and I think he could play both sides.
Was he linked to Everton yesterday?
He was. He knocked him back
on Saturday.
Has he knocked him back?
Yeah, he's knocked him back.
Sign him on.
Get him in now.
Get him in.
Best of Isak.
Make him club president.
Do his unveiling on the ferry going past the...
Yeah, he's supposed... I mean, the talk is he's waiting for he thinks he's going to get an offer from a big Champions League club. I think that is a definition of Liverpool Football Club.
Yeah, we spoke about him last week, didn't we? I think he looks really interesting, really exciting. Fun. He does look loads of fun. But I, like I said to you then, I will be amazed if Liverpool do business now for a left winger. I think they'll potentially look to do business for one if the opportunity is right towards the end of the window. I just don't see the order of priorities leading to that destination at the moment. I think they've.
But this is why they could do with the Isak thing being resolved one way or the other.
Definitely, and the Nunez thing and the Chiesa thing, because if as we suspect Nunez and Chiesa go, then we're down to one recognised centre forward in Ekitike, and he'll be new to the Premier League. So Liverpool absolutely will be prioritising a centre forward, and they should absolutely be prioritising a centre back. I think they're the two glaring holes potentially in the squad at the moment, and I say potentially just because we've still got Núñez and Chiesa on the books. And then once those priorities are sorted, it makes all kinds of sense to go after a bit of fun in Fofana.
With it, Mark, just mentioned centre-back there. Gomez going home is a precaution, but it's also a reminder. I think it can be overstated, the precautionary element. Liverpool are going to have to board a flight to go from Hong Kong to Japan anyway. And I think we've seen the training facilities. But all of that said, Gomez's injury record is Gomez's injury record. There was a link to Charlie Carousel over the course of last week. The talk around Mark Gay persists, but they simply have got to buy a centre-back, having lost Gerald Quansah, and I thought the manager made that clear.
Yeah, it's... I mean, the Quansah sale feels like a long time ago now, but it was clear from then that they were going to bring one in. Gay, he was obviously the name that was around sort of best part of a month ago now, and I know work went into that. It's just a case of where it's at. I think they're just waiting on the price with that one. I think Palace will have their opinion of what his price is. Liverpool will have theirs. And there's just going to be this sort of standoff in terms of how that progresses. Cresswell is an interesting one. Kind of came a little bit left field, but we saw him alongside Quansah in the summer for England, and he's a bit rough and ready, isn't he? And he's someone who I think Liverpool would think they can mould and use sort of his qualities. But no, it's something that has to be done. I mean, the Gomez situation, once you saw the news, it was just. A bit of a sigh, wasn't it? Because if one player, you want him to
have a good pre-season.
Yeah, exactly. You want him to have a good pre-season. You want him to just build up, and it doesn't sound like that serious of an injury. But you'd hope that by the time it's a week today, isn't it? The 2 Bilbao games. You'd hope easily. He needs to really be playing one of those to get anywhere near ready for the start of the season. If he is at the moment the backup, and unfortunately we know you can't rely on him for that.
Pre-season injuries are odd in a way, aren't they? Because I sort of feel like if they'd have just been at home training in England, you would quite possibly have never known that he had this injury in the first place. It doesn't sound like it's a huge thing in the same way that the Chiesa one didn't look mad, but you sort of, if you watch the goal back that he scores, you can sort of see him grimace, and he scores against Stoke, doesn't he? And you can actually sort of see him. There's a grimace on his face weirdly when he scores, but these are the kind of things that you quite possibly wouldn't know about under normal circumstances. Yeah. But having said that, Liverpool's Gomez's thing is that he's almost like half a player, and I don't mean that in that he's not very good, because I think he's really, very good, but in terms of you sort of can't rely on him, but when he's there you're always like, I'm happy we've got him, so you sort of have to have another one. I think 2 is almost too many, but these 2 links, I think the 2 links to Gay and Cresswell are both quite interesting in terms of the way they fit into the squad in terms of the homegrown rule, because I think we are at the actual cusp of the non-homegrown ones now. I mean, I'm saying that people will leave, but it does mean that you sort of have to... You're
over a barrel as well.
You have to buy appropriate ones, and I think it's interesting that the Gay one's gone quiet in terms of him just going anywhere, because I think it became quite clear that he's going to leave Palace this summer. There's been a number of people in for him, and then it got sort of like that Liverpool are in for him, and it's faded away, but it's not like he's staying, and it's not like somebody else has come in. It's just like Liverpool are sort of focusing on other things for a while, and I sort of feel like that might get done. I mean, there is also a world where I think they possibly could do him and Cresswell as well, and make both of them, and you can sort of go from there. It does look like it's a position Liverpool absolutely have to strengthen in.
I'd be surprised if they did 2 centre backs.
I would as well, but it wouldn't shock me if they're both of the homegrown variety. If they're not, I wouldn't have thought they'd do 2 that were, one of them was, there was a link to a Greek one yesterday. If we're going to do 2, I wouldn't have thought that it would be one of them. It would be just him. But if they're going to do 2 because of the way that you can make the squad fit, and you have to sign a specific type of criteria to fit, that's the only way I think you would do 2. But Gomez, he's such a hard one, because he's almost like...
There's times when he wish he's a bit less good.
Yeah, exactly. But also because he classes as the academy trained, his place in the squad is effectively sort of like, it's irreplaceable unless you have Trainioni or Rio and Gamoa or something like that. So it's not quite as simple as we'll sell him and bring someone else in, because the place in the squad disappears into thin air.
In a European sense.
He was very good for that 2 months last season, wasn't he? When he came in, was it the Brighton game? He came on at half time and he was fantastic, and then he stayed in the team up to, I think it was at West Ham away where he got the injury.
Stayed in the team and stayed at centre back. The manager played Quansah right back when he had to do something there. He did not move Gomez. He wanted Gomez at centre back.
Just on the Gahey thing, I think it's really interesting how Liverpool are doing business this summer. I think you're seeing a bit of a pattern emerging. I think Liverpool are winning the hearts and minds of the player that they want. Then they're going to the club and saying, we're willing to do business. Here's the range in which we're willing to do business. We're not going to take you for mugs. It's a very reasonable range. You take your time, let us know when you're ready to do business. While that club is looking around going, well, we wanted a bit more than that, we wanted a bit more potentially, and maybe delaying things, maybe looking for other offers, but the player himself has got his heart and mind set on Liverpool. And I think Liverpool are playing a very, very good waiting game, taking advantage of their position now as champions.
Got being bullies, in it.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Okay, I want to talk about the game against AC Milan. Talk about individuals more than anything else, Mark. First thing to take from it was just how sumptuous it's going to be watching Florian Wirtz.
Yeah, there are some players, aren't there, that you watch and you just it just oozes out with them, and just the way he takes the ball, the way he quite strong as well. He holds people off. He's got a lovely touch about him. I know everyone's been a little bit obsessed with where he's going to play, but I don't think it matters. Like he's going to be on the pitch, and he's going to be so crucial to everything they've got going forwards. You know, some lovely little link-ups, wasn't there, with Salah, and Salah tries to give him a goal at one point, which he probably shouldn't get used to that, but he should. I think he's gonna fit in. He'll be on the team sheet, and it doesn't matter where you play him. Dropping deep as well, a lot deeper than perhaps people would think, and just so dangerous around the box, switches of play. He's going to be fun.
He's got, Mark, it feels to me like the full range. So I thought it was interesting watching the Milanese try and cope with him, because at times they were going tight, they were getting turned, and then he's running away. It's not just that he turns you, that he then gets away. Then they sit off him, and then he can pick his pass. He can ghost in and out a little bit of space, as you say. Look, really happy to come deep. I just liked that sort of feeling of it. Whatever it is you're going to try and do, well, it's all right. He's going to counter that with this.
Yeah, and that's what separates the sort of good from the great, I think, in terms of those like players in that position. We've seen good players for Liverpool play and take up those positions in the last few years, but this we all know from the fee. We know from watching him. We know from being addicted to highlights of him in the last sort of 2-3 seasons how good he's going to be. It's that spot, and you saw it from what we did see of the Stoke game. You saw it. Him sort of taking up that right. I think you can see him in the area around the D, can't you? Just sort of, popping little passes in here and there. That could be where someone like Ekitike could be crucial for that as well, holding up for him. They couldn't cope with him, as you say, and he's just got something about him that the quicker that you can just get him up, hopefully he plays in the next one on Wednesday. He plays in the other pre-season games. You want him ready for that first game, because I think there's a real chance he can go straight into this Premier League and really take it by storm.
I really agree with Mark there, just about the idea of where he's going to play. I think it's irrelevant, because I just think it's
play where the ball goes.
Well, do you know why? Because I think, regardless of from the instructions from the bench, I think subconsciously the default mindset from players will be very quickly get him the ball. Yeah. Whatever, just get him the ball. Look for Wirtz. Just, I think he is going to probably define this generation of the Liverpool team. I think he is going to be the fulcrum that everything runs through.
Last season, I thought Liverpool start, and I think arguably Phil first 15 league games or so, you're watching them, and Liverpool, I'm not going to say could do what they want, but it felt as though the opposition was sort of struggling to come to terms with, where's Mo Salah? Where's Ryan Gravenberch? What's Ryan Gravenberch doing? A couple of others on the pitch, what's McAllister up to? Always trying to get a plan for Salah, get a plan for Alexander Arnold, because that's what you do. There's going to be a lot of teams who are going to need a Florian Wirtz plan. very, very quickly, I think. And it took a while last season for people to, for instance, get a grip of what Ryan Gravenberch was up to, and that's the tale of his season. I think that by the end of the season, it felt like more sides were able to have a bit of a Mo Salah plan. Good luck having a plan for everyone, because you're going to run out of players to have plans with.
Yeah, I think the best way you can sort of to talk about that and how the effect it has on other players is, I thought for the first sort of 15, 20 games last season, Ryan Gravenberch was untouchable and teams didn't know what to do with him. They then figured out sort of what to do with him, and it made him a bit harder, like that sort of, the hip swivel that he sort of patented, and when, look how good I am at this. He was just doing it 3-4 times a game and opening the pitch up, and then all of a sudden people realised sort of how to combat that, and got really tight to him, and sort of knew when he was going to do it, sort of blocked the lane off, got the right angle from when the pass came in, and got the right angle so it and prevented him from doing it. What that then did do is that it freed McAllister up, and yes. I thought there was I thought there was sort of like a real sort of relationship between where Gravenberch became sort of limited on by the opposition, and when McAllister's form really took off last season. And it's not a surprise to me that those two things were linked, because they had to sort of take away from looking where McAllister was. Looking where Gravenberch was. No, sorry, I was right the first time. Looking where McAllister was to then go into focus on Gravenberch, and it freed him up, and he's able to get the ball and go, get on what I can do with this ball here. And that's going to be happening all over the pitch. And even there's going to be players on the bench who come in and they're going to go, oh, we need to do something about him. And you can't. There's a limit to what you can do. And this is why the formation, I really like when people are sort of trying to plot what formation and style Liverpool are playing. I've just been doing it with Keo in the office, and he showed me something. I was like, I don't think it's quite the same as that. And it's not to say either of us are right, but more that teams across the land are looking at sets of players, sets of formations, sets of things they can think about what Liverpool are going to do, try and work it out, and they're not going to know. And also, when they do know, they'll be able to do something else, because they just bring another player on, they make a slight change. Mohamed Salah might go really wide one game, he might then come in a number 10 one game, he might play as like a second striker in one game. There's so many different options that teams must be looking at Liverpool going, well, how do we combat this? What exactly is it that we're supposed to do here? Like, I'm not going to say I feel sorry for them, but looking at one of the most interesting things you're going to be doing as an opposition manager this season is like, okay, well, how do we stop them? Like, I look at Arsenal, for example. I think Arsenal are a very good team, but I've got a pretty good idea of how they're going to play. Like, I don't think I'm looking at them and going, well, they might do this, they might do this, they might do this, they might do that. Whereas I don't think you can say the same for Liverpool. I think you're looking at other teams and you've got a really good idea of how everything's going to work, whereas this Liverpool team just feels so sort of free and able to go in a variety of directions, and it's just very exciting.
Only two halves of football into watching Dominic Szoboszlai and Cody Gakpo in this pre-season, Stu, so I don't want to get too carried away, but they look like fucking champions. It's striking that neither of them has actually won.
Have they got bigger? They might have got bigger.
Well, I think it's the Champions thing. Yeah. It's it made them that bit taller. Happened to De Bruyne year in, year out. There seems
27 foot tall.
There seems to be the two of them, because what's interesting is neither of them has actually won a major honour. Gakpo's at PSV years ago when they win the Eredivisie, but he's a young player at the time. He's not a proper sort of contributor to that. But one of the things that sort of hit me was the extent to which in Preston as well, I'll be honest, you just feel like they could come play a Premier League game tomorrow. They look absolutely crisp as anything, tip top.
They both look more like leaders than they have done previously. They look like senior players, which they haven't had the feel of. There's my view on Gakpo a lot of the time was brilliant player, but there were games where he could be very quiet, and there were games where he almost felt like a little bit timid. I think some of that was potentially to do with how he was used in his first couple of years at the club. I think last year did him wonders, having a bit more consistency in what the expectation of him was, and played to his strengths, and also protected him with the rotation with Diaz. But he's come out to that the other side as the player who is the de facto starter in the squad, isn't he, on the left hand side at the moment? You would imagine. Szoboszlai, I never understand why he gets the criticism that he's had over the course of last year. When people talk about Liverpool's midfield, they often talk about, well, he would be the one to drop out. I think that really underestimates and undervalues this very specific role that he was doing in all the running and protection behind Salah. He wasn't able to express himself and be as free as the other players within the midfield. His role was, he was nominally a number 8 stroke number 10, but really he was having to keep one eye all the time on that right hand side to do Mo's running for him. I mean, Mo said that himself, and he's such a powerhouse. He's an absolute unit. He's got an engine that just runs and runs. He's quick. He can't be pushed off the ball. I mean, he looks the most physically dominant player on the pitch almost every time you go out there. I'm really interested to see how he's deployed now with Wright coming into the team. I always thought that he may well be better a little bit deeper. But the idea that he's just going to drop out of the 11 now consistently because of, we've got Gravenberch, McAllister and Wright, I just don't see it. I don't see, even just from just the practical terms of having a lad who's big in that midfield and who's a powerhouse. I think Liverpool need that. We need to make sure that we're not bullied in the midfield. So I think he'll be used in a variety of different roles, but I do think that he'll be on the pitch more often than not.
I think there's a really weird thing with him where if we were to sit down now and say, right, Liverpool got a Champions League final, what's your team? You wouldn't put him in it on paper. He'd probably get into it. And he'll probably play 55 games this season. It's sort of a weird thing where if you're picking your team, he's not in it. But then he starts and he's in it, and you go, great, I'm fine with it. It's just a bit, almost a bit like Milner was in some respects.
I think Silva. I think Bernardo Silva. Yeah. I've heard him mentioned a lot previously about he could solve a lot of problems for Guardiola. Well, I think Szoboszlai does that. I think he can play him 6. I think he can play him 8. I think he can play him 10. I think he can play right wing. I've seen him play left wing against Chelsea on his debut. I think he's now playing right back. I think he's just going to be one of these players that you can just say, go over there and sort that problem out. We're getting hurt over there. Just go and shut that down for us, please. Or he can be, the number 8 running, doing late runs into the box, or he can just add his physicality into the midfield. The one thing that it might be a shame for him is potentially not having a defined role that actually brings the very, very best out of him. But in terms of an asset within our squad, I think you can't underestimate the impact that he has. And like you've just said there, Phil, by hook or by crook, I imagine him being in the 11 most weeks.
Like you're looking at the sort of the first game against Bournemouth, obviously Gravenberch is suspended. McAllister, you've got to assume, is probably not going to quite be ready because I think he's only sort of starting to integrate him into the team training sort of today, tomorrow sort of thing, and it didn't sound like he would play on Wednesday, and he'll probably be involved in some way against Bilbao and then possibly a bit against Palace in the Community Shield, and then maybe he'll get half an hour against Bournemouth. But it feels very much to me like the Bournemouth starting 11 features Szoboszlai and Jones as a midfield too.
Yep.
That's just how it looks like it's going to work at the minute, and that sort of tells you a lot about Szoboszlai, because you wouldn't then expect him to, at Newcastle the week after, you would expect Gravenberch to probably come in for him. Might be at the expense of Jones, and he still gets in there. But then over time, you'd expect McAllister to come in a bit more, and then he might end up playing in the 10. He might end up playing wide. There will always be a role for him because he's available, he's energetic, he has so much about him. There will always be a thing that he can do, but you might not necessarily sit there and go, well, here's the team I'm playing on Saturday. I think there might be a weird thing where if someone asks you to pick a team, it's very easy to not pick him. But the manager picks him, and you go, right, fine.
And it also, when you pick a team on paper, it can look very different than how it plays out in reality. Well, where you might be thinking, oh, I've got all these star names, but actually the balance that he brings and the energy and the power that he brings, in practical terms, is invaluable on the pitch.
And the classic example of that is the 2019 Champions League final team. If you just said to everybody, what's your favourite Liverpool team? You got that one. You would have just picked that one at any point in the last sort of 4 or 5 months of that season. It's the only time it ever plays together. Like that, and that is just why that football doesn't work in the sort of on paper way that lots of people think it does, and he'll be fine in terms of games.
Yeah,
more than fine.
Rio and Gamoa, was exciting. I think it's going to be a matter of managing his expectations, maybe managing some supporters' expectations. I don't want to go into a season thinking one of our key attacking options is a lad who's about to turn 17. I don't think that's a good place to be. But being able to think, could be watching this lad for the next 5, 6, 7 years, I think he's exceptionally exciting, and I think he can contribute this season for certain.
Definitely. He's got... you see so many young players on these sorts of tours, but he just looks to have that extra thing about him, doesn't he? And you just saw, he wasn't afraid of anyone. He was that moment where he squares up, it's Tamori, isn't it? And he just bursts past him. And, a defender who has played top-level football for 6, 7 years, however long it is. He's clearly, I think that you still need to see him as a bonus. You can't be making plans. He's going to start this game, that game. But I think if you think, rest of this calendar year, you're going to have League Cup, 1 or 2 games. You're going to have
Community Shield.
Community Shield, of course. Yeah, you're going to potentially have some Champions League games that he might get on for in the last.
You also get about 13 subs in the Champions League as well, don't you?
So he'll be involved. The thing I like about him is, what I've noticed in the last, certainly from this tour, a couple of things is they seem to be treating him as part of the first team. I saw the club media did a little piece with him, which you don't get as a 16-year-old very often. You tend to keep them a little bit withdrawn from it. I also like he's got his first name on the back of his shirt now, and that tells you something. Like he must have asked for that. He had surname last season. He's got his first name now. Not that you could really see those names on the shirts, could you, the other day? But that's obviously something where he feels strongly enough, for whatever reason, he wants that. He feels strongly enough to have gone to the club and said, "Can I have that?" Now, you don't get that unless you're part of the first team picture. So it's going to be slowly introducing him, but very exciting.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, Neil, about just keeping expectations, managed and all that. But I can't help but think, 16 and better than Barnes, to be honest. I watched him the other day. Just to bring a bit of balance to the equation. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But he is super exciting.
No, I'm all for it. Listen, if we end the season and he's grabbed us literally a starting left wing berth because he's brilliant, I'm all for it. What I'm not all for is not recruiting and going in short because you think, well, he can help out. It's one thing to think that in the summer. In the depth of October, when everybody hates everybody else, it's the Premier League is a very different place. That's my only point on this. That's the only expectation I want to manage. Is Liverpool need to make sure they've got enough really good forwards to play the attack.
October sounds terrible.
Honestly,
when everybody hates everybody else. Is that how you live your season? October.
That's how the seasons go when you're trying to get people to come in and do shows for the Anfield Wrap in October, Stu.
Wow.
Everyone's a bit like, fucking hell, footy, he doesn't stop. And I'm like, no, mate.
Do you think... I sort of wonder if we might find out a little bit more in a weird way in the next week, because the new kit comes out and they've obviously delayed all of the... They've given the new players temporary squad numbers, and I sort of wonder if we might get more of an idea on Ngamoa.
Naomi as well.
With that, because... I feel like Klopp didn't care about squad numbers and was like, I just wear whatever, but it might be that... So Conor Bradley might become number 12 or something like that because they decided 84 is ridiculous, and they might then move Neoni lower, they might move Ngamoa lower, you might get an idea from that how involved they're going to be, because it's, for example, there's a world where you could say, well, Ngamoa, you can go on loan and you can go and, like the way Elliott went to Blackburn at not massively the similar age. I think he was a bit older, but it wasn't hugely dissimilar, was it? And you might get him where he's like, if you look at it and go, oh, Rio Ngamoa is now number 27, you go, okay, that's probably a sign that he's going to be a bit more involved, but that's a complete guess based on how the manager treats squad numbers.
I think he's going to be involved.
It feels like something's going to happen with these squad numbers in the way that they've just done nothing. Like they've done nothing with them. It is a bit interesting.
It's the discipline of the squad building, which is that you don't. It's back to literally how many players is it that you want, and this throws back to you don't want to be saying to people who've been brought in as senior professionals, you're not on the bench. For league games, so you get 9 subs, but you also get injuries, and I expect Rio to be on that bench, Champions League games as well, but for that as well, a great deal. And then from there, if you're comfortable enough in games, I expect him to be getting half an hour to absolutely drive some right backs or right-sided centre-halves insane for a period of time. But I just think what I wouldn't want to do is not have enough players. That is my only concern with him, because you felt as though he can contribute in that way.
Give him the number 10 and a pair of gold Predators.
An advertising deal with Lucas 8 Sport. All right. Excellent stuff. From over on the tour, here's John Gibbons, Craig Hannan, and Josh Sexton.
Hello Liverpool, it is John, Josh and Craig. We are in sunny, warm, vibrant, exciting, a lot of adjectives, Tokyo. Hope you're all well back there. We've arrived here, we had a fun evening last night, some nice food, a few drinks, and then we woke up to a lot of heat. And well, a few different things, Josh, but the big one is that we might be in Japan, but Luis Diaz isn't going to be here for long. He's not going to do much sightseeing. I mean, unless the Bayern let him hang on a bit. So you do 2 days there, you'll be busy enough when you arrive. But it looks like Luis Diaz is touching down and then going straight off to Munich.
I'm worried sick about him, to be honest, John. I can't believe they had him flying out here just to fly all the way home. I feel
His legs are going to be in bits.
Someone should have got ahead of this, really, whether it was Bayern or whether it was Liverpool, and said, you can just fly him directly home from Hong Kong instead of all this messing about. No, I'm sad about it, to be honest. Like I mentioned on a couple of videos we've done so far that I was quite excited about the new signings, but I also wanted that continuity factor. And listen, you can't begrudge Diaz the move. It's clear he's wanted to leave for the whole summer. It seems like Liverpool have sort of feel like they've eked everything they can out of this current contract of his, and there's still 2 years on it left. So for him, he doesn't want to just sit there for 2 years, wasting his peak years. As I think there was a tweet going around last night that Craig was mentioning about him being the 19th highest paid player in the Liverpool squad or something along those lines. So
which feels sly.
It does feel sly, and sly for then him to spend, as I say, his 28th, 29th and 30th years on that same pay packet. So no, I hope he can go there and be one of the main men alongside Harry Kane, and hopefully enjoy it more than he got to enjoy Tokyo.
Out here, Craig, you could see him training with the team. He seemed quite relaxed. They were enjoying each other's company. So you kind of felt like, well, maybe it's not all done. And then as soon as he gets left out of that team, and Arne Slot in the press conference afterwards sort of confirming that it was for that, then you thought it is unlikely we're going to see him play for Liverpool again. And then, we're not even going to see him in this friendly. It looks like he's off.
Yeah, I mean, it's just felt inevitable over the past 10 days in particular, but like you say, whenever the lineups come through. I'm a bit sad about it too. Am I right in saying he's Liverpool's second highest goal scorer last year?
Yeah, he gets 17 in all
so
counts.
Those are big shoes to fill, and I said it in a podcast ages ago. He's a funny player, Diaz, because he doesn't have these like sort of match-winning, last-minute moments in the way that someone like Núñez has, but he is, so many first goals and so many goals that finish a game, and as I said, he was the second highest goal scorer last season. A really, really talented footballer who I've loved watching over the past 4 years, three and a half, and who leaves having won loads of silverware for Liverpool. So he's a footballer that I'll look back on fondly and miss watching week in, week out. I'm really interested to see what Liverpool do next now, because there is a lot of movement, and I've been saying all summer my only worry is how much movement there is in terms of the team. But now you're looking at the forward line and thinking, well, you could end up with basically two that were still there last year, and that is a lot of movement. So be interesting to see sort of what happens next.
Yeah, what happens next is going to be fascinating, because you will need replacing Josh. And I know it's funny, I was talking to a few people online about it, and it's like, we're just going to get Isak in, but Isak's obviously a completely different player. Listen, he'd be a really exciting player, but for me, he's more the solution to what's going on up top, and Ekitike looks like he can be sort of a little bit more versatile. But what do you then do with the others? And if I were to rank the forwards, from last season in terms of output, for me, the ones who were 5 and 6 are still here, and so that's why it seems strange to me that so many people are happy to see the guy who's second goalless. And I understand looking at it from the club's point of view and say, well, it's a good deal, it's plenty of money, the player wants to go, and sort of I get that. But I was having back and forth last night with a few people who were saying, he was inconsistent, he was this and was that. I would say he's going to take some replacing in this Liverpool team, because I would much rather be replacing the guys who weren't, putting in his numbers last season. And you might say, well, that's easier said than done, but you know, they are still going to look to move them on, and so it's going to be a busy few weeks.
Yeah, no, I think inconsistent might be a harsh assessment of him as well.
I'd be the opposite, actually.
I'd say he was pretty much a 7 out of 10
exactly.
every week. I think sometimes he gave you that 9, but Liverpool shifted him around loads last season as well. And I think you have to think of these things like, you know, me and Craig were talking about it during the friendly the other day. You look at Gakpo and how fixed his position is now. It's so fixed. And you heard Jurgen talking to the season when Gakpo was playing in the 8 and the number 9 and off the left and things like that. And Jurgen almost said, I probably have to take some of the blame because I think I've probably overcomplicated Gakpo's position for him, and if there's been too much mixed messaging. I think that's probably what happened with Diaz and Slot last season.
Yeah.
Really, that Diaz is so, you know, he's a number 9 for so many games, and then he's coming off the left for so many games, and it almost becomes, you know, overcomplicated for him. And still in that he gets 17 goals all comps. So I don't think you can fault him in any way with what he's done in terms of the options. Listen, Slot might just feel like he's already got the 2 replacements for him in the squad right now, and that is Ekatike and Gakpo. I think you can see a world in which Gakpo just becomes the bona fide starting left winger now, or left forward if you want to call it that, and then Ekatike is the one who sort of fills the 2 positions in the way that Diaz did last season, and that's how you bring in Isak. And then, you know, I know people are worried about the options behind that, but again, Slot mentioned about, you know, Gravenberch being a centre half option and Endo being centre half option of the day. I think they think of it as sort of footballers that can play in all these positions, don't they? Versatile players, and that's what Liverpool have got in, you know, Harvey Elliott. If he sticks around, then I can now see a world, to be honest, as these options close in on Liverpool, where Harvey Elliott gets you know, sits down with Slot and they go, listen, there's a route to more minutes for you this season, especially when Salah goes away to the AFCON. Just need you to stick with us for one more season, and then, you know, we can let you go and get your big move, and this can be a big season for you. And then you look at Wirtz playing through the middle the other night, and you look at, you know, Szoboszlai as you know, probably the most versatile option Liverpool have. I feel a little bit sorry for him this season in terms of positions he might have to play, but I think that's the way Slot will look at it. Is it's not necessarily just, you know, 4 or 5, you know, proper forward options. You know, not to mention the young lads there either. It's midfielders who can also play there too.
Yeah, I guess the problem is, though, Craig, that they can only play in one position at a time, and I think for Gravenberch, I don't mind him at centre half. In fact, I think he's quite good there. But if he's playing at centre half, he can't play at 6. So who's playing at 6? We are a little bit light there at the moment. Gravenberch almost ended up there, you know, out of necessity, I think, rather than this grand design, and then ends up doing fantastic and making the position his own. But then you're suddenly saying, well, is he starting Endo more in league games? He's not showing a particular willingness, despite what they think of him out here, to sort of do that. And then, you know, you're starting to think about sort of other midfielders who could cover in there. And so I get the point on versatility and being able to cover several positions, but when you're actually on the pitch, you can only play one.
Yeah, I don't see them bringing in a midfielder. They've got strong midfield options if the other holes are filled. You know, I think we're desperate. You see it the other night. We're desperate for a centre back. You know, obviously we got Ekatike coming in, but I was looking at it and going, God, we do need sort of more forward options here. I wonder whether they're having a big look at Nganoa and whether they're looking at him and thinking that he can be the 6th option. So rather than sort of, you know, Chiesa going and anyone going, right, well, we need to sign a backup to Salah or whatever, they look at Nganoa and they say, well, he can do the left and he can do the right, and he's that 6th option. He's really exciting and he'll get minutes, but not, you know, he's not going to be someone that's going to be, you know, banging the manager's door and saying, well, why aren't I getting more? And I've said it on numerous shows, I think that Diaz and Gakpo brought out the best in each other. You know, them vying for that position really meant that they were both at the top of their game. They both had their best seasons for Liverpool, so it's a real shame in that sense. And you know, I never liked the idea of it being, right, well, Gakpo's our left forward now, because, you know, Liverpool want to achieve what Liverpool want to achieve, then they're going to be playing sort of 60 to 65 games next season. So we're going to need those options, and it's a lot of new players to bet in. I think the one sort of plus in all of this is if it is Isak that they bring in, then you know that that's someone that's Premier League proven, and straight away, you know, you know that's how you replace the goals of Diaz and some, you know what I mean. But then it's who else, or, you know, because it's a body situation at the moment. It's, you know, it's numbers. So there's a lot to do, and that is the big thing here. It's exciting on one hand that you're going to have these new faces and these new players to create new moments and new songs. We're going to lose a really brilliant Diaz song, obviously Chiesa, you know, but that's exciting having these new faces. But also, there's only a finite number of deals that can be done at one time by the people that do that work, isn't there? And if they need a centre back, and then they're looking at, you know, 3 forward options or 2, or and plus then, you know, the Liverpool is a selling club, and some of the players that are going to be leaving. There's There's a lot of work to be done, isn't there?
Listen, there is a lot of work to be done, but there's a lot of good players there as well. And we're out here, Josh, in Japan, and arriving late last night, the few people we spoke to, it doesn't take long to get onto Endo, and they love him out here. It's really interesting hearing his story. And so we're in Tokyo now. The game's actually in Yokohama, which is about an hour away. But as Tokyo's grown, Yokohama's just sort of become a bit of a district of Tokyo, really. There isn't one stopping and the next one starting. And we learned last night that that's where Endo's from. That's his area. And there's going to be a lot of nice touches to Endo here. I don't think we're giving too much away by saying the mascots are going to be people from Endo's old school. There's going to be a few other things, in the week involving, youngsters who look up to Endo. And everyone you speak to here just talks about, what a good footballer he is, but what a good role model he is as well, because, of his humility. And, he does this podcast to try and kind of, educate young footballers, but everything that he does seems to be here being aware that he is such a talisman for Japanese football, and he takes that seriously, and we love him for it.
Yeah, and that's why we love him as well. I think he does have that sort of working class hero feel about him, doesn't he? Really, like you see the industry he has, and his ability to break up possession, all the moments that we can think of last season. It's interesting. Craig sort of mentioned there's not really Diaz moments. It's funny that they're Endo moments, really, where we can remember tackles, and we can remember him shielding the ball out for goal kicks and throw-ins and things like that. And
world class handball.
Exactly, a world-class handball. How can I forget the best moment of the lot of them? Like that, they are the reasons that we love Endo, is because he's sort of filled this role in the team. Arne Slot even came out and credited him last season as saying, that's a player who accepts his role in the team, really gets his head down and just accepts that because he is part of the wider team, and he wants to contribute to winning football and trophies. And I think Japan and Tokyo in particular is so proud of that, because the person that we were having dinner with was at pains to say he's not the biggest star Japan have ever seen, or that Japan even have in the team right now, but he's the captain, and he's the captain because he wants to sacrifice for his team, and he wants to work hard. And we as Liverpool fans can get behind that so heavily, can't we?
Yeah, I think a couple of people have out here have mentioned to us that when Liverpool first did, they were like, oh wow, Liverpool, like, you didn't think he'd ever sort of get to that level. But that just shows how proud he should be of his career, really, that even at that latter stage, probably he was given less than 24 hours to decide, if he was willing to come to Liverpool, but said, but what was the decision? It's fine, how much time do you need? It's Liverpool, this is everything I've worked towards. And that's how he's always played for us, really, Endo. He's always played for us with the spirit and the look of someone who's waited his whole life for a moment like this, and they're going to grab it.
And those players are important to have in the dressing room. There was a really lovely story, and I think we're allowed to say this. There was a really lovely story between about Elliot and about Endo, whereby they really got on in the dressing room, and they really respect each other, and that the previous manager had said to Elliot that he should look to Endo in terms of the way Endo sort of carries himself and does everything. And Endo went and said to Elliot, actually, no, don't. I really respect how you see the game, and I respect how you are able to get on there and make a difference and do things that I could never do. That he understood that he's not the person that goes and gets the goal and gets the assists and makes a difference at the top end of the pitch. His role is to enable those players, and so he was actually putting his arm around Elliot and saying, no, you actually keep doing what you do. Don't try and be more like me, because I want to be more like you, which was really nice. And Josh mentioned the idea of a working class player. One of the things in Japan with sports people is that quite often they've come from a school that's built and set up for success in whether it's sport or academia. And apparently Endo, that journey wasn't set out for Endo. He really shouldn't have got to where he has, but he has by working hard and at every moment putting everything in, and you can see that on the pitch. I loved last night speaking to, it was at Kiko, and I loved speaking to her about how much it meant to have Endo sort of playing for them and for everyone here, because I've said it in loads of Conor Bradley playing for Liverpool has just meant so much to me. So I understood everything that she was saying, that even though it's this bit part player who's maybe never should have really got to Liverpool, but here he is and has found himself there. He's just so he's enjoying every moment and seeing it as being precious that he plays for us, and that's really special, I think.
Yeah, this school that Craig mentioned is I say it's not one of the sort of the wealthy schools or whatever, but it's these kids who are going to be involved in a lot of the stuff that's going on over the next few days, including being mascots of the game, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. Listen, loads to look forward to. We're looking forward to exploring some more of this mad hot city, having some more incredible food, and of course cheering the Reds on Wednesday. So loads more from the Anfield Wrap. So if you don't subscribe, we'd encourage you to do so. If you download the app, you can get stuck in from there, audio and video. There's loads going on back in Liverpool, obviously all the transfer stuff. We're going to be grabbing the journalists out here and finding out all the latest on this Diaz move, but of course the Isak stuff as well, and just seeing if there are any more forwards and indeed a centre half likely to join them. Maybe not on this trip, but when we get back to Liverpool. So loads of reasons to subscribe. We'll be doing all the post-match content here from Japan as well, so audio and video from the Yokohama Stadium. Really looking forward to getting out there, really looking forward to seeing it. And Hong Kong fans were amazing. I'm sure the Japan fans will be even more so, perhaps. I don't know. Big challenge, big gauntlet to be laid down there. But thanks a lot for you guys for supporting us while we're out here. And very much to Ash for filming. We started in the shade, we finished in the sun.
Melting.
Well, we're smiling. Melting but smiling. Up the Reds.
Okay, welcome back. Thank you very much to the three who are away. Check out everything that they're putting out all the way through. They will be doing post-match pint from the game on Wednesday. Game on Wednesday kicks off at 11:30, not 12:30. It's 11:30 Wednesday's game. But straight after that, you'll have all of their reaction, both audio and video, from there as well. And they've been putting stuff out all the way through. Check it out on all the Anfield Wrap channels. Download the app, and you can see everything through there. So do get stuck in. It's exciting stuff, and there's other shows as well coming through over the course of the week. I wanted to talk about Luis Diaz in a brilliant and slightly odd Liverpool career. Stu, he's, you can almost do a little bit of a potted history. He comes in, I think, and he helps turbocharge the second half of the 21-22 season. From there, he starts the following season and is a rare bright spot in what was a really weird, stuttery opening from Liverpool, but then gets the injury. From there, then, he has the season where quite literally he has to deal with the kidnapping. And then he wins the league, and he's won every domestic honour that there is to win playing for Liverpool. It's an excellent Liverpool career. I am genuinely struggling to think of a parallel in my lifetime. I've been thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. Do text in if you do have one in mind. But I think it's an excellent Liverpool career.
Yeah, I mean, and in the sense of fairness to him as well, I think we've got to say it was 2 kidnappings that he had to deal with as well, not just one, really, both parents as well, I mean, when he came in, midway through that season, I thought he was incredible. Honestly, I mean, I'll never forget what he did to Man City in that semi-final at Wembley. He absolutely destroyed them. There was no stopping him. I thought, oh my God, what have we got on our hands here? And we were coming to the final days of Sadio Mane, and there was question marks over the front three, and to get this player in who was a warrior but unstoppable in flow, a real throwback dribbler, who terrified fullbacks. It was so exciting, and it feels like, funnily enough, it feels weird in the sense of it doesn't feel like we've had him for that long, but I suppose we've had him for 4 years,
4.5 seasons.
4.5 seasons. It doesn't feel like that. I don't know why that is.
3.5. 3.5.
And in fairness, he was injured for a large chunk of one of them as well.
Well, maybe that's why. But I think, he can leave knowing he's contributed to a great Liverpool team, or 2 great Liverpool teams, if you like, if you're transitioning from the Klopp team to the Slot team. He's left as a champion. He's left with one of the greatest songs the Kop has ever sung. And he does leave a hole within the squad, not least for being an outlet, a ball carrier when Liverpool potentially are under pressure at times. He can release that pressure. He's got so many different facets that are useful within the 11. We saw him morph into the centre forwards. I mean, arguably he was the first choice centre forward for a lot of last season. But at the same time, 28 going. When's he 29?
January.
So midway through this season, I think it makes all kinds of sense for everybody. I think Bayern Munich as well has this almost tradition of old wingers, great old wingers with Ribéry, Robben, Mane, Diaz now into the mix. I think he'll be great there. But he leaves as a champion, and he leaves with our gratitude, with our memories, and he was loads and loads of fun.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I've really enjoyed his time. I mean, I remember him coming in and I was a bit like, I wouldn't expect too much from him the first few months, and then he's excellent. He's excellent in the League Cup final that we win. He was excellent in that FA Cup semi-final. I think I've got a feeling he hit the post in the FA Cup final.
Yes.
And played really well. I think he goes off in all of them, so he doesn't actually score in any penalty shootouts, I don't think, does he? So I think he's gone. He's taken off.
He goes off in extra time in the first two, and he plays the whole.
And I always look back. I will always look back on that 21-22 season and think it's the closest anyone has ever been and ever will be to sort of football and immortality. When you think about how far Liverpool get that quadruple, we are effectively a Manchester City missed shot and a goalkeeping man of the match performance away from doing something that literally can't be bettered, will probably never be even equalled. And he was his impetus that he offered us the last few months was a huge part of that. For example, we play Manchester City away in the league and he doesn't start and he comes on and he absolutely terrorises whoever their right back was that day in the sort of last half an hour. And I walked out of that game thinking, if he'd have started, I think we'd have won that football match. And if we win that football match, we'd have won that league title. And that's a regret of mine, but it tells you the level he was at, that we were able to sign someone. And then 3 months later, he was of a level of importance that you're playing him in what was at the time the biggest club football match on the planet in terms of two teams going head to head. I mean, obviously the Champions League final is a bigger game. I mean, purely in terms of X versus Y. That was the game at the time. And he could have made the difference in changing the result because he was playing that well at the time. I mentioned before about that injury at Arsenal. I really think that was a huge problem for him. He was one of the few people who had actually started that season quite well. There's the goal he scores against Crystal Palace where we're down to 10 men and he cuts in, and it's just a genuinely lovely goal, and he did that a few times. Apparently that was the last goal he scored outside the box for Liverpool, someone told me the other day. Really? Which is quite a surprise when you think of what you've got of him in your head. And I really do wonder, that season probably would have been different as well. I think if he doesn't get injured, we probably get top four. Because we just miss out in the end, don't we? Although we have to go on a ridiculous run to do it. But he was just a very good footballer, very enjoyable to watch. As I said earlier in the show, it's sort of the whole thing makes sense in terms of him wanting a better contract and Liverpool going, well, it's probably fair enough that we don't. And I was saying to Mark before we started, it was like the most amicable separation I think there's ever been, because I think everybody understands everyone's opinion and no one thinks anyone's wrong, and it's a nice position to be in. Tells you everything about what he's offered to the club, but his attitude as a whole. I think he's been very, very hard working. His attitude's been absolutely spot on at all times, and it all seems to have gone quite well. He can hold his head up high, walk away, and gone, I've done a lot of good work there, and I'm going to go and maybe win a Bundesliga or 2 or 3 or 4.
Well, that's it. If he has a good season or really good couple of seasons for Bayern, that doesn't mean Liverpool were wrong.
No, absolutely not. It's a different game.
Absolutely.
Playing in the Bundesliga is a completely different beast, and it will probably free him up and give him a little bit more space, because you don't get many teams playing, 2 banks of 4 in Germany, really, do you? So it'll probably be a style of football that really, really benefits him.
Yeah, I think you can say it's a career. It's a Liverpool career that he just gave us all. And I remember early on, do you remember the goal at Brighton where he
when he nearly got his leg taken off? Sanchez it was.
And that sort of showed you exactly the type of player that we had. And I remember I was looking back at something actually yesterday I was doing for work, and when he signed. And do you remember the game he played for Porto, Anfield, didn't he, in the Champions League game? The game that the Thiago goal that everyone remembers. He'd played in that game, and from what I remember, he had a good first half, and I think he put a chance on a plate for one of their lads who missed a sitter, I think. And I remember thinking then that was the first thought because it was Spurs, wasn't it? Spurs were going to sign him, and then Liverpool obviously swooped in, and my first thought was, he certainly showed a lot in that game. But yeah, it's a we've touched on it. It's a career that I think everyone can say he gave us all, and those finals. I think of those finals really. Like he in the 3 Chelsea finals at Wembley, and he was just so threatening in a lot of them, and You think of the FA Cup final, Salah's gone off in the first half, hasn't he? And then in the most recent League Cup final, the depleted side that it was, and he's still there giving it his all. So, when you sign a player for what it was, 40 million from abroad, and they're coming in, these things can go either way sometimes, and you can look at his career as a whole piece and just think, he accredits himself in a very good signing.
Not the same as players, but in terms of sort of impact, shortest period of time, I've sort of landed on Peter Beardsley. Sort of has to deal with the reality of John Barnes, isn't the top scorer, isn't the best attacker, is an absolute magician. Diaz, not quite as sort of as mercurial in a way as Beardsley in one sense, but it's a similar sort of length of time. He's at the club, signs in 87, leaves in 91, wins 2 league title medals, 1 FA Cup. I was
thinking there was logically going to be someone around then, because there are a lot of people who say 3 or 4 years, so it feels like that makes sense to me, but I wasn't around then.
No, because they're not the same as players in a number of ways, because Beardsley was in loads of ways just like this little genius.
It feels like you're trying to narrow your criteria here.
Yeah, if you're not careful, yeah. No, that's what I mean, like exactly the idea of that sort of, oh my God, career maybe. It's interesting looking at the numbers in that, if we allow sort of games being 95, 96 minutes, Gakpo's slap bang 1 in 2, and Diaz is 1 in 2.5, to your point before about forwards and all those other little bits and pieces. It's been great.
Yeah, it really has. It really has. And just one thing on that Beardsley shout. I remember with Beardsley, the criticism of him as a Liverpool player, which I think was probably harsh, was unfair, but was perhaps that he wasn't a 90-minute player. That he would, within that Liverpool team, I think he became more of a dominant player within the Newcastle and Everton teams. But I think in that Liverpool team, although he could bless games with a bit of magic. He could also be in and out of games, which is something you could never accuse Luis Diaz of. I think Luis Diaz is an absolute warrior, always making himself available, always looking for the ball, always looking to try and help his teammates and have an impact on a football match wherever you play him. It's been brilliant. Love him. Wish him all the best.
He can win as much as he likes,
absolutely.
Apart from Champions Leagues, which we'll have.
Yeah.
That's the spirit, Stu. Thank you very much to Phil, to Stu, to Mark. It's been fantastic all the way through, and thank you very much indeed to Luis Diaz.